The Cowboy Meets His Match by Melinda Curtis. Prologue. All Olivia Monroe had ever wanted to do was sail, and sail fast, faster than anyone else. And for a long time, she'd done just that, to the delight of her family, her sponsors, and her fans. But any athlete will tell you that success is fleeting. One minute, Olivia had been on top of the world and ahead of the race with her fortunes on the rise. The next minute, she'd been thrown into the ocean and trapped beneath the surface with her life flashing before her eyes. She'd come back to the living in a racing official's boat. She'd come back, but she'd left her sponsors, her racing yacht, and her nerve at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. For weeks after the accident, Olivia had hidden away from the world, the press, and, some might say, from herself. She needed an intervention. One came in the form of an old sports psychologist named Sonny. His goal was to help her rebuild her life and reclaim everything she'd lost. She'd come to the remote Idaho mountains and the tiny town of Second Chance with Sonny in tow. Why would a sailor come to a landlocked place like Second Chance? Because Olivia, her siblings, and cousins had inherited the small town, a little-known fact, and no one in the racing world would look for her there. Heck, for the most part, the Monroe branch of the family left her alone in the capable care of Sonny. She spent nearly 2 months trying to stow away her fear of the water and get back on a boat, even if it was only a dinghy and only on a small mountain lake. 2 months of listening to Sonny encourage her to be honest with herself. She'd never been good at that. 2 months of him guiding her into a solid meditation routine. She'd never be good at that. And 2 months of facing the broken internal parts of herself. She wanted to be done with that. Admittedly, Olivia wasn't the best client, but she and Sonny had formed a bond. She trusted the old man, even as she dragged her feet through his recommended treatment. And just when it seemed there was hope for her, slim though it might be, Sonny suffered a heart attack and her family closed ranks around Olivia, determined to send her back home to Philadelphia. Olivia wasn't leaving Sonny alone in Idaho or caving in on her determination that he continued to help her rediscover her backbone. But Olivia wasn't the headstrong, independent woman she used to be. The more her family argued, the more Olivia felt her resolve crumbling. Cornered and desperate, she'd known she only had one chance to stay the course. And so, she'd reached for the easiest defense at her disposal, a handsome cowboy, and the flimsiest of excuses, they were in love, and tried to sell the illusion by kissing him.
Chapter 1. Rhett Diaz had a way with the ladies and a weakness for a dare. He knew he had an attractive mug and that he managed to string together words that often brought a blush to a woman's cheeks. He knew fear rarely factored into his rationale. But when he dropped out of the rodeo circuit to help run the family ranch, his dating life and adventurous dares became pretty much non-existent. Second Chance, Idaho, offered little in the way of either. He fingered the lips Olivia Monroe had just finished thoroughly kissing. A warm mountain breeze tugged at the brim of his cowboy hat, as restless as Rhett was inside, wondering why Olivia would tell everyone standing in the parking lot of the Bent Nickel Diner that they were a couple, and then when it seemed like a half dozen of her family members were closing in with doubt, she'd kissed him. Him, a cowboy she'd only talked to a handful of times. Rhett allowed himself a rueful smile. That kiss was one that couldn't easily be forgotten. Half plea, half passion. It had left Rhett and the rest of the Monroes speechless. Across the narrow 2-lane highway, the wisp of a woman in question disappeared into the medical clinic where her friend Sonny was recuperating from an apparent heart attack. She shut the door firmly behind her. Word had come down that an ambulance would be arriving soon to take Sonny to the hospital and catch him. "We need to talk." Shane Monroe took Rhett by the arm and headed toward the Bent Nickel. He was one of Olivia's many cousins in town. Without a word, Holden Monroe took Rhett's other arm. He was cousin to both Shane and Olivia. "Hey." Rhett shrugged them off and tipped his hat back, ready for a fight. Overcome by protective instincts, he cut himself short of explaining how he'd been caught off guard and lip-bombed by Olivia. Olivia was gaunt, the way folks got when they were recovering from a serious illness or a devastating heartbreak. But her caramel-colored eyes held a spark of intelligence and, sometimes, humor. If she was being bullied by her family and had reached for him as her savior, he wouldn't betray that trust. Shane held up his hands. "We just want to talk." He wasn't as tall as Rhett, or as broad-shouldered. But he dressed like a corporate man on one of those casual Fridays in the city, khakis, loafers, a crisp blue polo shirt, and he acted like he always knew what he was doing, even if Rhett sometimes suspected he didn't. "Just talk," Holden reiterated. He was taller than Rhett, older than Rhett, and dressed like a cowboy, which was a bit mind-blowing since he was rumored to be a successful moneyman from Wall Street. Rhett drew a long, slow breath, making it seem like he was thinking about walking away. In truth, he was thinking it might help Olivia if he knew what her family wanted, other than to send her away. He gave a brisk nod and led them inside the diner, choosing a booth near the window where he could see the medical clinic. Shane slid onto the seat across from Rhett, and Holden pulled up a chair at the end of the booth's table. They both wore serious expressions, borderline frowns. Rhett crossed his arms over his chest and waited. If there was one thing he knew about this pair of Monroes, it was that they always had an agenda, a plan, or an offer in mind. He'd let them play the first card. "Forget everything that happened today," Holden said in a slow, deep voice. "Well, almost everything," Shane said with just as much gravitas. Rhett contained the urge to roll his eyes. The chance of him giving that kiss a memory wipe was slim to none. Shane exchanged a glance with Holden, pressed his shoulders back and rearranged his all-business expression into a slight smile. In a blink, Rhett went on full alert. He was more accustomed to seeing that kind of emotive flip Shane had just made from a cocky, young bull. Not a frown to a smile, per se. More like a little charge at Rhett, followed by a few moseying steps in the direction Rhett wanted the bull to go, and then a sharp pivot to charge Rhett again. Rhett knew what to do with young, ornery bulls: stand his ground. He kept his arms crossed and a sharp eye on the two men. "We visited you at the bar a few days ago," Shane began. Rhett nodded warily. "We were there discussing the sale of your family's vintage carnival rides." Holden picked up where his cousin left off. "I recall you saying you wanted to start an adventure tour company. Is that so?" Rhett felt as twitchy as a steer waiting in the chute. He didn't like folks bringing up his dream, especially when it was so far out of reach. Talking about it felt like admitting he was a failure, since the odds of him making it happen were a long shot. His grandfather and sister couldn't run the bar alone. "We were wondering if you could tell us more about the tour company you have in mind to open." Shane sounded friendly, but then again, the Bard's ranch cat appreciated a good scratch behind her ears, until she didn't and nipped the scratcher. "It's just that, an idea." Rhett wasn't about to spill all his beans on the table. He was just a cowboy with a skill throwing the rope. These guys were men of the world. "Well, you see," Shane continued with that reassuring smile. "Between Holden and me, we've got a lot of business expertise. I want to increase tourism in Second Chance. And Holden wants to mentor people, like you, to make their business dreams a reality." Rhett's pulse picked up, hastened by a sliver of hope. "It wouldn't be hard to get a small business loan," Holden began. "Stop right there." Rhett shook his head, mentally trampling the vestiges of optimism to dust. "I won't take out a loan. My grandparents did that 15 or 20 years back, and that gave your grandfather an opportunity to buy us out. Harlan Monroe had come back to his hometown a decade ago and bought out its residents. He then turned around and charged them a lease of $1 a year, hoping to keep the town afloat. Despite that, the Bard continued to struggle to turn enough profit to support 3 people. Shane and Holden exchanged glances. Holden nodded slowly. "Okay. A business partnership, then. Something could be worked out." "With who?" Rhett regarded the men with suspicion. "That remains to be seen." Shane shrugged his shoulders. "You too?" Rhett was beginning to catch on. "Why would you want to partner with the likes of me? A former roping champion and nearly broke cowboy. You're not broke. You have a decent amount of seed money, Holden said slyly. We delivered a check to you, remember? The one for several $1,000s that Rhett had been given as a bonus for signing on as a roping consultant to a Western film that was going to be shot in Second Chance come spring. Rhett shook his head. He hadn't planned on cashing that until he got the job for real in 6 months. He never counted his chickens before they hatched. You'd bring that check and your enthusiasm for the business to the deal. Holden tipped his hat back. Unlike Rhett, he didn't look like he was ready to pick a fight. He looked like he'd adjusted that hat so he could see Rhett better. What kind of business did you have in mind? Rhett hesitated, faced with a fork in the road. He could either trust these men with his dream or cling to his pride and the same old dead-end existence. He heaved a sigh, choosing to expose his aspirations as well as his lack of business knowledge to the Monroes. I don't know what kind of adventure tour company I want to run. I love a good adrenaline rush, but what do I do with that? The easy answer is a whitewater river rafting company. There used to be a river rafting company in town. The owner turned into a snowbird after your grandfather's buyout. He only comes back for a few months every year, but he didn't return at all this summer. That sounds like an opportunity, Holden said. Rhett didn't agree. It would if lazy floats down the river excited me. Around here, the Salmon River meanders past. There's no whitewater rush. Shane glanced from Holden to Rhett. Seems like a hard way to make a living, being open just 5 or 6 months out of the year. Rhett nodded. I was also thinking about zip lines. We've got some steep slopes here in town. But again, it'd be seasonal. And ranching, he gave a small laugh. Ranching is seasonal, too. If I ran a touring company, I wouldn't be able to pull my weight at the ranch. Which is why I'll have to turn you down, I guess. He felt a strong measure of disappointment, and then a stab of anger. Why me? Why now? If you were interested in helping me, why not discuss this business when you were out at the ranch recently? Things have changed. Holden leaned forward, placing his elbows on the table and nodding toward the parking lot where Olivia had kissed him. Rhett pressed his lips together and said nothing. You're dating Olivia, Shane stated matter-of-factly, as if he'd bought into Olivia's stunt. You know what she's been through. The accident. The near drowning. The loss of everything that was important to her. Are you trying to buy me out of the relationship? Fake though it was. Holden and Shane exchanged another glance. Okay, that look you two share is beginning to annoy me.
Olivia? Olivia jolted awake with a crick in her neck and a foot that was asleep. It took her a moment to get her bearings. A dim hospital room. Sonny sleeping in bed, tubes and wires attaching him to monitors and IVs. His snow-white hair and beard looked limp. He seemed less like a mischievous garden gnome and more like an old man who'd suffered a health scare. Olivia. Liv. Cousin Kendall stood in the doorway, looking rested and ready to go on a coffee date in a casual black jumpsuit and heels. The outfit reminded Olivia of the cowboy with the black hat she'd kissed and then left to clean up her mess yesterday. As kisses went, that one was what her grandpa Harlan would have called a humdinger. But that wasn't important right now. Olivia stretched and unfurled her legs, flexing her foot to bring back much-needed circulation. Light tried to peek through the window blinds. The big round clock on the wall read 8:15. It had been a night filled with interruptions from nurses, and she was tired. What are you doing here, Kendall? Checking on you and the old man. Kendall closed the door until all but a sliver of light from the bright hallway distinguished the entry. How is he? He had 3 stents put in last night. Olivia tucked Sonny's blanket more firmly around his shoulders. If the surgery had been earlier, they would have released him yesterday. Can you believe they'd let him go so quickly? Thank heavens for overscheduling. Sonny stirred. I'm fine. Unhook me and I'll race you to the door. He cracked one eye open. Did you sleep here last night, Olivia? That chair looks uncomfortable. It is. Olivia stood, working out the kinks in her stiff body. Why are you really here, Kendall? I told you that I'm Team Sunny until I'm back to being me. The only way I go anywhere is if I can take him, too. Besides which, he needed someone to take care of him. Sunny reached for Olivia's hand and gave it a weak squeeze. It's nice to wake up and know some things haven't changed. You're still hard-headed, although you'd probably call yourself determined. And you're still too short-sighted to see anything but the sunny side. Olivia gave him a tender smile. Endearingly so. Kendall moved to stand at the foot of the bed. I hate to break up this tender moment. No, you don't. Olivia rolled her eyes in Kendall's direction. But Shane and Holden have a favor to ask you, Olivia. Kendall paused, perhaps waiting to see if either Sunny or Olivia would shoot the favor down without listening. When no further interruptions arose, she continued. They're thinking of investing in your boyfriend's adventure tour company. Olivia could feel a frown coming on, inspired by a suspicious thought that her cousins had found a way to meddle in Olivia's life. She should have known that kissing Rhett wouldn't buy her a get-out-of-jail-free card when it came to family interference. Monroes were notorious for circling the wagons when someone was in trouble, whether they wanted to be protected or not. What's the favor? Olivia asked, at the same time Sunny said, who's the boyfriend? Yikes. She's talking about Rhett, Olivia hurried to say before fixing Kendall with a hard look. Spell it out for me, Kendall, including what my cousin Shane and your brother Holden didn't want you to say. Kendall gave Olivia an encompassing look while she gathered her thoughts and finger-combed her hair. They've asked your cowboy to provide a proposal regarding what type of adventures this as yet unnamed tour company would offer in second chance. And they want me to help him write this plan up? I'm sure Rhett is capable of conveying what he wants to do. He was completely capable of kissing her. An expert, in fact. He had to have skills in other areas, especially if he wanted to run his own business. Kendall shook her head, sending all that black hair cascading around her shoulders. He's going to visit several different tour companies and test them out, then decide what to do. Olivia rubbed her forehead. I'm at a loss. Where do I fit into this? Isn't it obvious? Kendall sked. The guys want you to vouch for Rhett. Consider him vouched for. He's a decent guy. I'm sure he'll be a good investment. At least Olivia assumed he was, since it was increasingly clear he hadn't told anyone their relationship wasn't real. No. You misunderstand me. Shane and Holden want you to go with Rhett on this research mission of adventure companies and make sure he has the guts to be an owner and guide. The guts? Who am I to judge someone else's courage? A feeling of trepidation gathered in Olivia's stomach. Take a trip with Rhett? It shouldn't be a hardship. Kendall loaded her words with sarcasm. He's your boyfriend. But Sunny just had surgery and... Sit me up and call the nurse. Sunny fumbled with the bed's remote. I'm fit and ready to hit the road. Olivia took possession of the bed controller. Slow down. You've just had surgery. And you're at a place in your recovery where you need a change of scenery, Olivia, Sunny said in a gravelly voice, accented by a wink that was reminiscent of the optimistic man who wasn't shy about confronting her broken parts. Even if you won't admit it. What better way to ease back into the world again than with a road trip filled with adventure and accompanied by your cowboy? Because of the unknowns, both the adventure part and the cowboy part. The old you would have jumped at the chance, Kendall said with something akin to suspicion in her voice. And there it was, the impulse to put up a shield to keep her family, including Kendall, at arm's length. Or perhaps make a run for it. Olivia stayed put and poured Sunny a glass of water. I'll do this favor for Rhett if you'll come with me, Sunny. We won't leave until you're ready. Olivia wasn't going anywhere alone with that kiss-worthy cowboy. She could barely stand up for herself with her family. How could she possibly resist the temptation to kiss him some more? Child. The hospital room door was pushed open, and a doctor entered. He turned on the overhead lights. "I'm Dr. Jenkins. Is this your family, Mr. Horn?" "No," Sonny said at the same time that Olivia said, "Yes." "I'm his only family," Olivia said staunchly, daring Sonny to deny it. He had no living siblings and no children. Sonny sighed. "Some family you're born into and some you find along the way, document." Dr. Jenkins surveyed the room, paying particular attention to his patient. And then he faced Olivia. "If you two could leave us alone for my exam," he gestured toward the door. Olivia shook her head. "No, I." "Go on, Olivia." Sonny made a shooing motion. "Get yourself some breakfast and see to your hair. It's as limp as your courage on one side. Like I care about my appearance." Olivia stared at Sonny, registering the features that had become so dear to her. His soft blue eyes. His overgrown white mustache and haystack whiskers. He was out of shape and in poor health. A year ago, she would have taken one dismissive look at him and invalidated anything he had to say. But somehow, over the course of the past few months, he'd become closer to being a father figure to her than her own dad. "I'll step out if you promise to tell me everything when I get back." "I promise no such thing." Sonny chuckled. "Kendall, take her away." Kendall obediently hooked her arm through Olivia's. "Come on. I've got a comb and some makeup in my purse. I can make you look presentable." Kendall was obsessed with appearances. "I'll use the comb, but your idea of presentable using makeup is the polar opposite of mine." "Who do I need to impress?" "Yourself? Liv, you haven't looked like Captain Olivia Monroe since the accident." Kendall continued to tug Olivia along the corridor. "Are you really considering doing this ride-along with the cowboy?" In her concern for Sonny, she'd forgotten about Rhett. "Yes. He's my boyfriend?" Olivia said, trying not to cringe over stating it as a question, because Rhett's loyalty deserved hers. "Plus Shane and Holden will help his business if he passes inspection." "Why wouldn't I go?" "Because he's a cowboy with no steady paycheck." Kendall sounded as if she judged Rhett on the slimmest of information. "Because while he was on the rodeo circuit eating county..."
Chapter 2. "I can't believe you're leaving us." Cassie fixed her brother with a hard stare. She flung her black braid over her shoulder. "I'm just recovering from a rodeo injury. Grandpa and I need you at the ranch for all the heavy lifting. You have Bentley Monroe to help out." Cassie's boyfriend. Rhett leaned against the kitchen counter, drinking his afternoon coffee. His gaze slid to his grandfather, who sat at the table sorting his numerous medications for the week. "When Grandpa got sick over a year ago, I retired from the rodeo and came home to help you with the Bar D. Our roots are here, but you know I never wanted to be a rancher." He'd been footloose on the circuit and happy about it. Heck, the more he thought about the trip ahead, the more interested he was becoming in leaving and doing things he'd put off since his rodeo retirement. "My excitement has nothing to do with bringing Olivia along." Rhett covered a smile with his coffee cup. "I should hate myself, given I'll be deceiving Olivia." Rhett's smile faded. "That part wasn't so exciting. Your daredevil streak won't earn you a living," Grandpa prophesied in a dry voice that managed to poke Rhett's temper to life. "That daredevil streak made me a champion roper," Rhett said evenly, hanging on to patience by the thinnest of threads. "And the Monroes believe I can make money for both me and a business partner, which is more than the hard scrabble living this place makes." Ajax, their black and tan heeler, gave Rhett a soulful look and a wheezy squeak of his new bunny chew toy. Cassie sagged into a kitchen chair and took Grandpa's hand. The look she gave Rhett filled him with guilt, her words more so. "Will you be like our parents and walk away from our heritage so easily?" Rhett don't think about his roots like we do, Cassie. Grandpa patted Cassie's hand. He's always looking for the next thrill. I know where my roots are, Rhett said in a voice that sounded one note above a growl. This is home. But it makes no sense to stay if I'm just one more mouth to feed. Rhett didn't like to face reality any more than Cassie or Grandpa did. But things had changed for him since Olivia had kissed him, unwittingly opening a door to opportunity. And since opportunity didn't often show itself, Rhett was barging right on in. Thank you very much. That is, if Olivia agreed to go along. He didn't like his future hanging in the balance contingent on someone else's whim. In addition to this trip being an adventure test run, there were pitfalls and obligations, all of which hung on the balance of keeping Olivia cooperative. How was he supposed to do that? Why now, Rhett? Cassie asked. Things are looking up. Are they? Rhett rinsed out his coffee cup. The ranch will get a boost of income when the old carnival rides are fixed up and sold. And come spring, we'll be supplementing our earnings by working on a movie being filmed up here. If it happened. He refused to bank on it. And after that, then what, Cassie? I'll still have my horse training. His sister's voice was weaker than before, and Rhett was sorry to have burst her bubble. Plus, I'm teaching others how to train their horses. And you coach the next generation of ropers. Money comes in. And money goes out. You and I both know you can pay a ranch hand less than I draw from the accounts. Rhett shook his head ruefully. I'm not abandoning the ranch. I'm easing your financial load. His family was silent, even the dog. Rhett pressed on. There comes a time in a man's life when he's got to take a risk and branch out on his own. And maybe I'll get flung to the dirt like that rodeo bull did to you in your dreams, Cassie. But I have to try. It's time for me to reach for something different before I'm too old and set in my ways. His gaze drifted to his grandfather. Do we have that Monroe gal to blame for your restlessness? Grandpa gave Rhett a narrow gaze. Folks in town are talking about you two as an item. I don't see much of a future between a cowboy and a boat captain. Although he agreed, Rhett kept his mouth shut. Much as he loved the old man, no good would come of telling his grandfather the truth of the situation. Grandpa held a secret the way a colander held water, which was not at all. Ajax lifted his head, ears cocked. The sound of tires flying over gravel came through the open window, a sound louder than the gentle purr of a civilized car engine. The car didn't stop at the ranch yard. It was headed toward the old Bard D homestead, which was where Olivia and Sonny had been staying all summer. Ajax bolted for the mudroom and the doggy door. Rhett wasn't far behind the dog, putting on his boots and cowboy hat before exiting via the human door. He needed to know if Olivia had come clean to her family about their relationship. More importantly, he needed to know if she was interested in going on his trip. If she wasn't, the deal Shane and Holden had offered was off. And then what? He didn't know. The afternoon sun was high above the pines, the air heavy with the muggy heat of summer after last night's rain. Ajax ran ahead, pausing on the road at the rise as he waited for Rhett, as if they were a team. At least the dog has my back. 2 sedans were parked at the end of the homestead's gravel driveway. The red one's engine pinged as it cooled. Dust was just beginning to settle on its shiny fenders. Ajax ran up to the front door of the one-story house and barked. The door flew open before Rhett reached the small stoop.
Honey, I missed you. I'm so excited for our trip. Olivia barreled into Rhett. She wore a black tank top, tan cargo shorts and flip-flops. She wrapped her arms around him and turned her face up, the way women turned their faces up when they wanted a kiss. Rhett was inclined to oblige, and yet, he hesitated. Olivia Monroe was a slip of a woman with a tousle of sun-kissed brown curls and a tumble of baggage to work through. She was in no place to start a relationship and he had no right to pursue one with her. But she had a way of looking at a man, like she was doing now, that made Rhett forget the good and bad of the tangle she'd gotten him into and focus on the way she felt in his arms. So, he kissed her, just a quick buss of his lips against hers. It shouldn't have caused a jolt to his system. It shouldn't have made him tighten his arms around her. But it did. Rhett smiled. Ajax gave an excited bark and then raced back toward the bar D, as if he had a secret to tell Cassie and Grandpa. So much for the dog having my back. Although her arms were still around Rhett, Olivia's eyes flared with warning as she looked up at him. Are you here for an update on Sonny? He's fine. Isn't that great? Her tone was sharp. Almost mocking. She wasn't selling the idea that they were a couple. I'm glad he's okay. The craving to kiss her properly was strong. She was beautiful and he was a man, after all. But he was dancing on a thin line. He needed her cooperation if he wanted Monroe financing. Voices murmured from inside the house, an audience. Olivia's performance implied his trip and their fake relationship were both still on. Smiling again, Rhett released her. I'm packed up and ready to go. Just say the word and we can hit the road. Slow down, cowboy. Olivia turned, darting back inside. We can't leave until Sonny's better. He followed her into the house like a puppy expecting more treats. Were your ears burning? Kendall, that willowy Monroe who dressed like Second Chance was a big city, gave him a calculating smile reminiscent of Shane's. We were just talking about you. I'm sure it was all good. Rhett removed his hat but remained in the foyer. This had once been his grandparents' home. The dated orange and brown furniture still filled the living room. A painting of the lake still hung above the mantel and the room still held a hint of his grandmother's perfume. Or that might have come from the bouquet of yellow and blue flowers on the coffee table. Nobody has anything bad to say about Rhett. Olivia went to sit in a chair near Sonny, who reclined on the couch, looking better than he had the day before when the ambulance had taken him to the hospital. Come in and visit. Kendall was just leaving. Thanks for driving us back, Kendall, Sonny said. His t-shirt read, What are you thankful for today? The bearded old man favored t-shirts with sayings the way Rhett favored plaid shirts and cowboy boots. We're leaving as soon as I get a delivery. We'll talk again when we return from our trip. Our trip? Rhett echoed. I thought it was just Olivia and me. It's not a honeymoon, Kendall said sternly. If Olivia hadn't insisted upon taking Sonny, I would have chaperoned. She marched out the door, high heels clicking. You be careful with my cousin. You may be convenient cowboy, but you're far from being Monroe approved. Convenient? Approved? Stung, Rhett was unable to let the dig slide. I'm always careful with the ladies. Kendall laughed. No one's ever called me a lady before. Olivia looked as if she wasn't certain the label was a compliment. I've never been one of those girly girls, like Kendall. It's a term of respect and I give points to Rhett for it. Sonny regarded Rhett levelly. Even if it was delivered more for sarcastic effect than deference. I suspect our Kendall rubs him the wrong way. His wouldn't be the first feathers Kendall's ruffled. The corners of Olivia's delicate mouth tilted upward, hinting that she could be as playful as her short brown curls. Rhett's gaze roamed from those curls down to Olivia's small feet. He'd never seen her in anything other than flip-flops, which didn't bode well for their trip. Do you have sneakers? You'll need them. I don't know. I haven't seen or worn a pair in months. Olivia stood and strode purposefully toward him, blue flip-flops snapping with each step. Let's take a walk. She clasped his hand and gave him a tug toward the front porch, not that it took much to draw Rhett along. Back in a few, Sonny. She closed the door firmly behind them and led the way to the little wooden rowboat pulled up on the lakeshore. Come on. I haven't been on the water yet today. I thought you didn't like the water. And Rhett wasn't a fan of boats. Why don't we take a walk around the lake? According to Sonny, being on the lake is part of the recovery of my confidence. Wading in, Olivia pushed the boat into the water, holding the bow near the shoreline. Get in. Rhett dug in his boot heels. If you aren't up for a walk, we can take a ride. Your feet look small enough to fit in my sister's boots. A horseback ride was romantic and private. They could stop at the overlook up the hill and... I wanted to talk, not, her hand fluttered between them. It's like she can read my mind. Rhett bit back a grin. As a cowboy, I'm sure you've heard the saying about getting back in the saddle. I'm a sailor who capsized. Olivia flinched, and when she continued, her words had bite. If I don't get on the water regularly, the fear gets in my head. Come on, honey. Humor me. There was a power struggle going on and Rhett feared he was losing because he took a step forward before he realized what he was doing. No, he planted his boots again. Olivia's gaze narrowed. If you're afraid of getting your boots wet, take them off. Her voice rang with that command she was rumored to have lost. Get in. We need to talk and then I need to make dinner. He noticed she didn't invite him to the meal. They stared at each other while a breeze ruffled pine branches above them. They were at an impasse. Someone had to give. Or at the very least, move things along without admitting to being a total fool. All Rhett had to do was prove he was as obstinate as she was. I'm not afraid of getting my boots wet. He stomped into the water and climbed into the boat without any finesse. There. Are you happy? Yes. She vaulted into the boat, losing a flip-flop in the process. With an audible gasp, she quickly snatched it back, holding herself still for a moment before blowing out a breath. I'm okay. Good. She'd rocked the boat enough to make Rhett's stomach lurch. As a teenager, he'd capsized a canoe in this lake. It was why he didn't like small boats. Olivia took a step toward him, climbing over the middle seat toward the back of the boat where he was. Is she going to sit in my lap? He didn't dare move. Thank heavens for fake relationships and appearances. This is unexpected, but Rhett held his arms out. I'm ready. Olivia threw her arms out as well, only not to encourage an embrace. She looked like she was searching for balance. Sailors don't sit in laps during a sail. She stopped moving, except to cross her arms over her chest. I can't get by you to the outboard. Which was currently in the horizontal position behind him, keeping the blades out of the water and shallow mud. It's a small lake. We can row. He gripped the wooden oars and turned the boat around. He rowed facing forward, having no choice but to do so since she was standing between him and the seat best suited for rowing efficiently. Arms still out, Olivia wobbled. I like to go fast. That outboard is 5 horsepower. It was his father's old fishing boat. It didn't go fast. She plunked down on the seat across from him. Fine. Get us to the other side of the lake. Sonny won't be able to hear us over there. Rhett did as he was told, but only because he valued his privacy as much as she seemingly valued hers. The lake was calm. They didn't speak. For several minutes, the only sound was the dipping of his oars and a twittering blue jay swooping past. Olivia stared at his hat or something in the distance behind him. The homestead, perhaps? Don't tell me Shane is sending you along with Rhett, too. Olivia stared at her brother Bentley, who'd shown up with a bag of groceries and his suitcase. It was after dinner and growing dark outside. Did Rhett tell Shane that we argued? You argued? Sonny rested the book he was reading on his chest. That explains your mood this afternoon. Kendall filled your grocery order. Bentley handed Olivia the bag of food. And no, you couldn't pay me to go on that trip with Rhett. Remember me? Roller coasters make me nauseous. He entered the house and deposited his suitcase on the floor. He wore a maroon t-shirt, blue jeans and work boots. His understated look and attitude didn't give the impression that he was an engineer and intellectual whiz, a brilliant man who was currently fixing carnival ride engines for Cassie and Rhett, readying them for sale. I checked out of the lodgepole inn. I'm going to stay here while you're gone. That way, Sonny can hang with me. Immediately, Olivia was suspicious of his motives. Did Rhett suggest you do this? No. Bentley knelt to unlace his boots. That's nice of you to offer, Bentley, but Olivia wants me along. Sonny picked up his book, How to Raise Goats. He'd announced during their meal of spaghetti that buying a goat farm was his retirement strategy. Olivia had been speechless. But she had plenty of words now. Nice? Let's be honest, Bentley. Your stay here has less to do with Sonny and more to do with being close to Cassie. Not that I'd begrudge you a room. Olivia shut the front door and pointed toward the tiny bedroom near the kitchen. She might have injected her summation with too much sarcasm because Bentley glanced up at her with eyebrows raised. I'm sorry. I'm a bit cranky. I'm still landlocked and working on myself. If her rocky interaction with Rhett was any indication, she had a long way to go. Everyone is a work in progress. Sonny shook a finger at her. Everyone. Not Bentley. He's practically a certified hero in every way. Olivia faced her brother. Not that she expected him to reply. Bentley spent too much time in his head, mostly losing track of conversations while he solved some weighty mechanical issue that was only of interest to him. Sonny angled his head to pin Bentley with a stare. Is that true? Are you a certified hero? Not a chance. I've got my flaws, Bentley admitted as he stood. Grandpa Harlan used to say leave nothing unfinished. I say keep on improving. But Olivia's right. I'm not here to offer Sonny an alternative to the trip. Although he can stay if he wants to. It's convenient for me to bunk here, a stone's throw away from Cassie and the Bar D, because she's going to need help while you continue to chase a thrill with Rhett. A thrill. Cassie hadn't given much thought to the adventure part of the journey. Bentley's expression softened. You're excited about this trip, aren't you? Olivia nodded, thinking about cowboy kisses and rocking the boat, although she wasn't sure if it was Rhett's boat or hers that needed rocking. Surprisingly, the metaphor of an unsteady boat didn't make her cringe in fear. Probably because slow boats don't rock much on small lakes. Or perhaps because she truly sunk into an all-time low when Sonny collapsed and there was nowhere to go but up. That made sense, since in some unfathomable way, taking care of Sonny gave her strength enough to argue with a cowboy in a way she might not have before the accident. She'd commanded her crew decisively, but they ribbed her and each other almost mercilessly, the way Rhett did her. Olivia, I want to be available in case you need me when you get back. That's what brothers are for. Bentley gave her an earnest smile. Now, don't worry. I'm not going to constantly ask you if you need anything. And I'm not going to hover over you as if you're fragile. You'll get your space. But if you need something, I'll be here. Olivia's mouth dropped open. Just last week, she'd unleashed her anger and frustration over her rock-bottom, dead-end situation, and she'd unleashed it on Bentley, accusing him of being responsible for her accident. He'd made the boat she'd sunk, after all. And because that wasn't cruel enough, she'd told him he hadn't helped her recovery with his hovering. She'd apologized later, but she'd still felt like they were two siblings who'd never been close and never would be. They'd both been closer to Bentley's twin, Bryce, who died a few years ago, than to each other. Until now. Today. In this moment. Things around her were changing, like the turning of the tide. She should have been anxious or upset about the trip. Instead, she was looking forward to it, which made no sense since Rhett was as tenacious as she was. The quicker she verified his guts, as Shane put it, the quicker she could return to this place and the business of conquering her fears. I knew there was a reason I liked you, Bentley. Sonny beamed. What's not to love? Olivia murmured. Don't worry. I won't make a big deal out of our sibling devotion, Bentley said gruffly, bear-hugging Olivia before disappearing into the small bedroom. Olivia sat down near Sunny. This could get weird. Only if you make it so. Sunny put a hand on her knee. Do you know what a true family does? He didn't wait for her to answer. They weather the big storms and enjoy the smooth waters. Together. A sailing metaphor. I like that. But was this just the calm before the storm? Or was she over the worst? Sunny splayed his fingers through his beard. Do you know what I like? I like the fact that the real Olivia is returning, bit by bit. And who might she be? Because Olivia wasn't sure she knew anymore. Chapter 3. You're up early. Yawning, Bentley entered the kitchen and poured a cup of coffee from the pot. I don't know what's come over me. Olivia flipped an omelet in the frying pan. For the first time in months, I woke up eager to face the day. Without the undefinable sadness and very definable fear that had weighed her down for months. By the way, that coffee is decaf. And the omelet is made with egg substitute. Items Kendall had sent with him last night. But you're welcome to both. Pass. Bentley dumped his untouched coffee back into the pot. I'll grab real coffee and breakfast at Cassie's. Will I see you at the ranch later? Olivia plated the omelet and then glanced toward Sunny's closed bedroom door. He had yet to make an appearance this morning. Why would you see me at the bar D? Oh, I don't know. Maybe because Rhett's there. Bentley shook his head as he sauntered for the door. And here I thought I was the clueless one when it came to relationships. I'm not clueless, Olivia mumbled. Nor am I in a real relationship. Rhett didn't need her fawning over his muscles and rancher skills. The man probably knew how strong and competent he was. And how good of a kisser he was. She sighed, wishing she hadn't felt so cherished in his arms. Besides, there was only one man Olivia planned to fawn over today. She crossed the living room and knocked on Sunny's bedroom door. Good morning, Sunny. It's time for your pills. Sunny grumbled something unintelligible. Olivia knocked on the door again. The nurse said you need to take your pills regularly every 12 hours these first few weeks. It was 7 a.m. He'd taken last night's pills at 7 p.m. Such badgering. Sunny opened the door. He was wearing the same blue shorts he had on the night before and a wrinkled gray shirt that said, "Seize your moment." You're worse than the nurses in the hospital. I'll take that as a compliment. You need to eat a little before you take your pills. Olivia returned to the kitchen and the small round table. What's this? Instead of sitting, Sunny gripped the kitchen chair back, staring at the omelet suspiciously. A healthy start to your day. He turned his apprehensive stare toward her. You don't cook. I can cook. A little. She hated admitting to being less than skilled in any area. But the truth was that she was an awful cook. That's kale, isn't it? Sunny turned up his nose. I want pancakes. Pancakes aren't on your suggested diet. Olivia snatched up a stack of discharge instructions he'd been sent home with before plopping them back on the table. It was a thick stack and landed with a substantial thunk. Sunny sank into the chair. Where's the salt? Where's the cheese? Olivia chose not to reply, allowing him time to come to his own conclusions. Sunny sighed. My existence will now be divided into life with food I knew and loved, and life with food I now have to eat to live. Cry me a river. It's not so bad. I'm making one for myself. Olivia returned to the stove and poured more egg mixture into the cast iron pan. While it cooked, she glanced out the window over the sink, looking for a tall cowboy on a black horse galloping through the trees on the other side of the lake. Finding nothing, she pushed the rim of the omelet with the spatula, testing it for doneness. Sonny made a gagging noise. "What's wrong?" She rushed to his side. "Kale and fake eggs. That's what's wrong." Sonny pushed his plate away and reached for his mug of coffee. Olivia returned to the stove, bracing herself for his reaction. He gagged once more. "Decaf? How can I achieve my optimal self every day without a rich cup of coffee and pancakes? Pancakes are comfort food for the healthy and very young." She gently turned her omelet over, then sprinkled some sautéed kale on top. "I have it on good authority that I'm young at heart." "Whose authority?" Olivia folded the omelet over. "Mine. I'm in charge of my spiritual well-being, as I'm in charge of your emotional well-being. And now, I don't feel very much like being perky, positive, or never mind my well-being." Olivia plated her omelet and came to sit with him, not wanting to justify his complaints with arguments. "Look. We're doing this as a team. That should make you feel better." She took a bite of omelet. It was slightly rubbery, moderately tasteless, and the kale was stringy and quickly tangled around her back teeth. "You see," Sonny crowed, pointing at her with both hands. "You don't like it either. Tell me where you hid the salt and pepper. This can't be right." Olivia stared at the omelet. It was an appealing yellow color and lightly browned on both sides. "It looks delicious." And Sonny looked desperate. "I'll eat a salad today if you tell me where the salt is and allow me to add cheese." "Not a lot. Just enough that I can choke it down." She shook her head. "I can't. This is the first day of the rest of your life. And if she couldn't captain this ship, what good was she? We have to eat right. The first day of the rest of my life was yesterday." Sonny stood, a determined gleam in his blue eyes. "What good is living if all I can eat is cardboard food?" Olivia pushed the omelet around with her fork, considering taking another bite. It was just so tasteless. Stalling, she tried to free the kale from between her back teeth with her tongue. "We'll compromise with just a little sprinkle of cheese. If only we had something bursting with flavor like Gruyere or Blue." Sonny dug out the small packet of shredded cheddar cheese. He sprinkled a little on both omelets. Dutifully, they both took bites. "It needs salt." Sonny glanced around the kitchen. "Where'd the salt shaker go?" "In the dishwasher. I dumped the salt down the drain. First thing." She'd felt so efficient, so purposeful. She hadn't felt that way in months. The feeling drained away. Her shoulders sagged. No sad face. "Not to worry." Sonny went to the cupboard, rummaging inside. "We have garlic salt. Somewhere." "No, we don't. That went first. And I dumped the last of the fully caffeinated coffee in the trash, too." Olivia took another bite of her omelet, chewing unhappily. An image of Rhett's charming smile came to mind. According to Bentley, her fake boyfriend had fully caffeinated coffee at the bar D. "Finish your breakfast and take your pills, Sonny. We need energy because after breakfast, we're going for a walk. I hear Captain Monroe in your voice." Sonny eased back into his chair. "And suddenly, I don't know if I'm happy or sad about it."
"Hey, Olivia. We thought you'd show up here sooner or later," Shane called out from the tailgate of his Suburban where he sat with Holden and watched Rhett work with 4 young roping students. Having not expected Olivia, Rhett jerked in surprise at Shane's announcement. Unfortunately, his flinch came just as he threw the demonstration lasso. Rhett's throw missed the practice steer. Instead, he'd roped Tanner's 5-year-old son Quinn, to the delight of the 3 other cowboys in training. Ow. Frowning, Quinn let the lariat fall to his scuffed brown cowboy boots. I thought you said you'd rope the practice steer. Even I can rope the practice steer. 6-year-old Adam kicked up dust in the dry pasture turned makeshift arena. Probably even Papa Shane can rope a practice steer. Maybe even Uncle Holden. Don't bet on it, son. Shane hopped off the tailgate and went to greet Olivia and Sonny. He wore a white polo shirt and blue slacks. Holden, who'd been sitting next to him, did the same, adjusting his straw cowboy hat. The presence of Shane and Holden on the slightly run-down Bar D had already set Rhett's teeth on edge. He suspected it had been doing the same to Tanner, and now Olivia. Take over for me, would you? Protective instincts rising, Rhett hurriedly looped his rope and handed it to Tanner. The two cowboys were practicing some of the sessions they planned to hold for the rodeo school Tanner was organizing in a few weeks. Rhett hurried over to the gate, taking big strides to reach Olivia. Hey, hon. As soon as the endearment left his lips, Olivia's gaze sharpened. For the life of him, Rhett couldn't recall if they'd covered how he should greet his fake girlfriend in front of an audience. What a pain. On a whim, Rhett picked Olivia up and swung her around the way he did when Tanner's little daughter Mia came to visit. He set Olivia down gently, pleased to note that she was both speechless and breathless. They'd left things on an off note yesterday and he'd lost sleep over it last night, wondering if she'd call off their trip and their pretend relationship today. What was it about Olivia that made things so difficult? But now, having Olivia in his arms, he couldn't risk teasing her. Plant one right here, honey. Rhett tapped his cheek, angling it toward Olivia. Start my day off right. Her fingers flinched on his biceps and her eyes flashed that familiar warning. She wanted to plant something on him, all right, but it wasn't a kiss. Young love, Holden intoned dramatically. Rhett slung his arm over Olivia's shoulder at the interruption and snuggled her tight against him, tighter than need be, if truth be told. Was it his fault he enjoyed pushing her buttons? He deserved a little something for keeping up this ruse. Santa. Santa. The kids in the pasture caught sight of Sonny and called him over. Sonny happily played along. With that white hair and beard, he bore a striking resemblance to Saint Nick. Who's been naughty and who's been nice? The kids joyfully answered. Summer was coming to a close, after all, and Christmas was now on the horizon. Olivia, I know this isn't the right time. Holden settled his cowboy hat more firmly on his head after Sonny left them. But the investment group that sponsored your racing team wants to meet. And I thought. This is a bad idea, Olivia said, petite features pinching. I can't bear the idea of stepping on a racing sailboat. I might never sail again in. I thought, Holden continued firmly, that you could touch base with each of your corporate sponsors individually while you accompany Rhett on this trip. Hang on. Where are these investors located? Rhett's question earned him dark looks from Shane and Holden. I only ask because the point of the trip is to explore different adventure businesses for me. And you don't see too many whitewater rafting excursions heading out of Wall Street. Fair, Shane said slowly. I was thinking more of having Olivia visit each of their headquarters. Holden stuck his hands on his hips. There's no glare eyewear in Bismarck. Non-slip footwear in Chicago. And fantastic fish sticks in Baltimore. Olivia set her lips together and glared at Holden the way she'd glared at Rhett yesterday. Rhett much preferred the intensity of that look aimed at someone else. If I were a more suspicious person, Holden, I'd think you were trying to get me to leave second chance. Olivia smiled up at Rhett. With my boyfriend. She turned that hard stare back Holden's way. And returned to Philadelphia and sailing before I'm ready. Rhett's breath caught. Olivia's tone, her stance, her smile, everything about her said she was poised and assertive. She didn't need Rhett's protection. And yet, she held on to him as if he were part of her support system and had been for some time. Like we belonged together. For real. Olivia, your job, your life. It's all in Philly, Shane pointed out, as transparent as a trotting bull with a cowbell on giving away the direction he was going. You're the only Monroe who wasn't directly employed by Monroe Holding Corporation. Holden somehow managed to look less conniving than Shane and more relaxed while supporting the exact same goal. Olivia smirked, not buying any argument her cousins were feeding her, no matter how true. She's something, all right. She glanced up at Rhett. When my grandfather died, his 4 sons inherited everything but second chance. The one condition to their inheritance was that they fire and discontinue support for the 3rd generation of Monroes. She gestured to Shane, Holden, and herself, meaning my siblings and cousins. But the racing team was an entirely different animal, funded outside of the family business. She was saved the emotional turmoil of being fired by her father, Shane said with an easy shrug. In the end, I landed in a better space. How about you, Holden? Same. Holden nodded. You know, I invested in you, too, Olivia. And the only way I'll get some of my investment back is if you sail again. Olivia clung tighter to Rhett. A new boat requires significant capital. None of your sponsors has bailed, Holden said quietly. Not even me. Because you're all hoping I'll make that back, and more, she said in a small voice. Or at the very least fill in the gap that insurance didn't cover. It sounded like a lot to put on one woman's shoulders, especially the weight of her having family lose money as a result of her actions. All right. Olivia cleared her throat. I'll make those sponsor visits on 2 conditions. First, Rhett needs to be able to find suitable adventure experiences to explore along the way. And second, you let me chart my own course toward regaining what I lost. If lazing around a lake all day is how to do therapy, I should have found a therapist long ago, Shane said with a deceptively simple smile. You've been here 2 months, Olivia. We only want what's best for you. Listen closely, Shane. You, too, Holden. Olivia's voice was as cold and hard as a metal fence post during a midwinter blizzard. I came here with a fear of the water, a fear that was breaking my heart because I love the ocean. But while I've been here, Sonny's helped me overcome my fear. And not just that, some of my selfishness, too. I'm learning to open up, which is why I'm with the big guy here. Olivia elbowed Rhett, none too gently. Oof. Rhett tried to look blissfully happy. I made a mistake that cost me everything. Olivia's voice was thick with emotion as tears welled in her eyes. But don't presume to know what or who I need around me to find some internal balance. Holden nodded, clearing his throat. So, it's yes to the investor visits? They hinge on my sugar plums itinerary, don't they? Olivia wrapped her arms around Rhett and backed him up to a fence post. Excuse me, gentlemen. I have a cowboy to say good morning to. And trip negotiations to make. I like it when you're bossy. Rhett murmured. Shut up and kiss me, she whispered. Give them a good show. And he did. No cowboy in their right mind would refuse Olivia Monroe's invitation, even if they had to endure a nickname like Sugar Plum. But darn if a thought didn't intrude, Olivia would never respect a man who allowed her to lead him around. Good thing Rhett wasn't a man who allowed himself to be led. She deepened the kiss. Except maybe this once. Rhett turned his complete attention to kissing her thoroughly, but it was only a few moments later that Olivia drew back. She glanced up at Rhett through a set of thick dark lashes and whispered, Do you know what I want most in this world right now? Me? He didn't dare say it out loud. Coffee. She grinned. And if you were my Prince Charming, you'd offer me a cup. As you wish, Buttercup. Rhett slung her over his shoulder and carried her to the ranch house, ignoring her protests and the ribbing of her cousins. Because there was no way a convenient cowboy could win the heart of Captain Olivia Monroe by simply granting her wishes.